out of order. You are completely out of order. Please take your seat. Please proceed, Honorable Beatrice Elachi.
Madam Speaker, as I proceed, and I want to thank you, as I support this motion, I just want to say this. See, when you are in a house of records, you can never say what my colleague has just said, because he forgets his own side, the whole leadership is also not there. So I'm wondering, are you learning from which side? But anyway, having said that, Madam Speaker, I want to support this motion on climate change. Madam Speaker, I know it is a very, very sensitive subject, not just for Kenya, but for the whole world, as we talk of how we can use, indeed, technology, which is a very critical aspect in understanding and addressing the impacts. And I want to thank our colleague who has thought about it, looking at what happened a few months ago, Madam Speaker, in Mandera. And you see that flash wind that just came and just eroded everything and left Mandera in a manner where many of us could not understand after the drought we had seen. Indeed, there is importance now to bring in technology so that we also understand. And Madam Speaker, you'll realize even just recently, we had a very, very tough heat wave. And this is a wave that really crossed the whole country, and people are getting affected. You realize people are just dropping. We have buried many. They are wondering, why have I just lost a relative, a brother, just like that. But it is because of the effects of this climate change. And so when we look at the meteorological department that we have, Madam Speaker, which is right in my brother's constituency in Dagoretti South, it is something that we need to ask ourselves, how do we now encourage to have different courses for our learners so that they are able now to start engaging and be able to now start learning new technologies on how to deal with climate change using satellite, using even data. And you know, in today's world, we collect data. We can collect data even when we are seated here. That is how we have advanced in AI. And even when you read different, today we have ChatGPT. You'll find students going on it, Madam Speaker. But we need to analyze it so that you are able to make it your own original. And so even when we are talking about climate change, we have to ask ourselves, as an African continent, what are our challenges in our own climate change? Because we cannot be like Europe. And so even as we bring in those new technologies, we must ensure they adapt the way our climate behaves within our country. And so when we look at Kenya and the seasons we have, Madam Speaker, it is that we're telling the meteorological, can we look at the seasons? And can you be able to use technology to tell us how these seasons have changed? In terms of one, yes, we shall bring in policy, but that policy now has to go. We must understand, why did we have very heavy rains in January? All of a sudden we had heat, and now we have changed. We are about to go into rains. We are still talking about El Nino. And so even as we do technology, and even if we want to understand the aspects of addressing, we must realize each climate, each continent has its different way of climate. And so even as we support this motion, we want to say that there is need to just look at different aspects of how these scientists of Kenya are going to tell us we are now ready for technology. We are able, and even when they are telling us, today you realize, today they will tell us it will be rainy. All of a sudden we find there is no rain. People prepare. It means that is why we need a new technology to assist us to understand. And especially in where we have very long droughts, and then you change all of a sudden, you find yourself in rain that is beyond rain, and then all of a sudden it just drops. I'm trying to imagine that by the time we get into the month of April, I am waiting to hear the meteorological department telling Kenya, what are we going to experience? Is it the normal rain for planting, or is it a rain that is beyond planting? Are we going to be able to see ourselves again in floods, or it will be a rain that you can contain? But having said that also, Madam Speaker, do we have students who are also engaging in the subject? Because when I went last week at the meteorological department, I realized we have very few who are engaging also in this course. So I want to plead with also students who have finished their KCSE, that you can just look at your grades and start. If you can be a meteorological person, please go to the meteorological school, which is just near Dagoretti Corner, and join in, because we need more of them than what we needed. As we talk to the Ministry of Environment, we also need to ask ourselves, even as we create all this, how can we ensure we also take care of the normal? Yes, we are planting trees. What type of trees are we planting? It needs technology for us to understand. These are trees that can be planted in Nairobi. These are trees that can go all the way to the dry areas. Yes, we've just talked about cotton in the morning. It is part of that, because cotton can also help in mitigating, especially soil erosion, as you plant in dry areas. And so, Madam Speaker, we want to ask ourselves, as I finalize, that it is important, yes, to have technology, but we must have technology that will indeed also be adapted and can impact to our lives better than having technology that we will not understand, that will not adapt to the climates that we have within Africa, regions that are within the equator area. We must ask ourselves that question as we bring in key people, and also make our young people to embrace and ensure they can also be part of this technology. And I know we will have good monitoring policies that can really embrace this country to appreciate that there is climate change, but we also need to take care of it. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.